In my opinion, a plate of pasta can be one of the most satisfying, delicious, simple dishes that you can put together at home. But what if I told you that with just 10 really simple, barely even steps, you could be on your way to making a plate of pasta just as good, if not better, than a trattoria you could get in Rome. Especially when you consider the amount of tourist traps that there are, so there's that. These 10 tips, or little adjustments to the way that you're currently cooking pasta at home, are going to make all of the difference, and I promise you, you will be cooking pasta like a professional in moments. If nothing else, stick around for the 9th tip, because that's kind of the big game changer that's going to make a massive difference in what you're cooking. But the rest are all very easy to implement, so check these out. Tip number 1, source great pasta. So before you've even started cooking, it's really important to make a decision on what pasta brand you want to buy. Now, you don't need to spend a ton of money on this kind of stuff for something super artisanal and niche, but if you just look on the packet for the words trafilata al bronzo, that means that the pasta was made by being extruded through a bronze die, yada yada. What it basically means is that your pasta has a nice, rugged, textured exterior to it, which means that it's going to hold on to a pasta sauce way, way better. And all of this starch on the outside of the pasta is going to make a really amazing sauce, which I'll get to in a future tip. Tip number 2, prepare your mise en place. Now, mise en place is a fancy French word which basically means like your preparation of ingredients, everything in its place. And this is a great rule of thumb for pretty much all cooking, but primarily pasta. So when you're finishing your sauce, everything comes together very, very quickly. So you want your ingredients at hand and readily available to you. So if you have any herbs, shred them from before. If you need to add a ton of great cheese, get that nice and grated. Get all your vegetables prepped, get all your sauce made, your pot filled with water and yada, yada, yada. Get all of the tools and ingredients and bits and pieces that you're going to need to work, because pasta can come together quite quickly. Tip number 3, use only just enough water to cook your pasta. So there's conventional wisdom that states you need at least a big pot and like 4 liters of water, a gallon, I think, to cook pasta well. You need lots of boiling water. Now, not technically true. What I would recommend rather is about 1 liter of water per 100 grams of pasta. So that's about 1 liter per portion, more or less, depending on the type of pasta. But what this will do is that in this small volume of water, it's going to be mostly filled with pasta, and the pasta, as it cooks, is going to give off a lot of starch. And that leads to a very high concentration of starch inside our pasta water. Now at this stage, you don't really know why that's important, but we'll get to that shortly. Just keep in mind, you don't need a ton of water. Tip number 4, season your pasta water well. So there's typically 2 camps to people who season pasta water. 3, I guess, if you count the people who do it right. But there's the ones who say you need to season your pasta water so it tastes as salty as the sea. Close, but the sea is actually quite salty, and we want our pasta water to be a little less salty than that, roughly 1.5%. I'll get to that in a second. And there's also the camp who are like, whoa, 20, 30 grams of salt being added to my pot of water. That is far too much for me. Salt is bad for my blood pressure, and etc, etc. Now we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. Now, as I said, 1.5% of salt. So for every 1 liter of water, you need 15 grams of salt. For most plates of pasta, I find that to be absolutely perfect. I like things a little bit salty, I like things well seasoned, but that means that you're going to have a nice, salty, well-seasoned pasta base. Now, depending on the sauce that you're using, so let's say it's a very salty carbonara, you've added a ton of guanciale and it's very, very salty, you could bring that down to 1% salt quite easily, and it'll still be delicious. You don't want to add no salt to the pot, because then your pasta tastes really bland compared to this nice tasting sauce, and that just doesn't work out well. Tip number 5. Add your pasta to ready boiling water. Now, what this will do is ensure that all of our salt is dissolved, so our pasta gets seasoned nice and well, and that the cooking times on the packet of pasta remain consistent. If you start in lukewarm water, you're probably going to need another couple minutes. The pasta is going to start soaking up some water. It just adds inconsistencies to your dish. Having said that, there are some exceptions to the rule. Now, I've cooked pasta in a very small pan of water with just enough water to cover and started it from lukewarm, and the pasta turns out great. Like, there's obviously different ways of achieving the same result, but for consistency's sake, until you're super comfortable with recipes, I would highly recommend boiling the pasta water first. Tip number 6, when you add your pasta, you want to start stirring immediately. Now, one of the biggest errors that I see people do with pasta is you'll end up with a really nice plate of pasta, sauce it well, but a lot of the pasta sort of like stuck together, and it's not particularly cooked well in between these pieces. Or if you're getting spaghetti, there's like 4 spaghettis stuck together, and it's just chewy and not very good. Now, the best way to go around this is to add your pasta to the water and keep it moving. In the first couple of minutes of cooking, the starches on the outside of pasta are going to gelate or become sticky and ooey and gooey and want to stick to each other. Now, if for the first 2 minutes you stir the pot every 30 seconds or so, you are going to prevent this from happening. You don't need to keep stirring your pasta as you're cooking, but a couple of times for the first couple of minutes, and that's pretty much all you need. Since we're just over halfway through this video, I'm going to take the opportunity to tell you that if you find any of this stuff interesting and you want to go way, way deeper, I made an entire Skillshare course on how to cook the perfect plate of pasta and how to master the 5 or so really popular Italian pasta sauces. If you're interested in that, check out the link in my description. You can take the course absolutely for free with one of my free trial months, and that would really help out the channel, and I think you would really appreciate it if you could cook a really amazing plate of pasta. It's a really useful skill to have. The course is just under an hour long. There's tons of recipes, tons of material, and feel free to reach out and ask me any questions you have about pasta. My door is always open. Back to the video. Now, there's a popular misconception which says you should add olive oil to your pasta water. That way, when the pasta goes through the surface, it gets coated in oil and it sticks together much more difficult. That's kind of a good way to throw away a bunch of olive oil. I don't see the value in it. If you just stir in the beginning, nothing really sticks together. The oil can kind of get in the way of you making a nice emulsified sauce at the end. Not my favorite move. A little wasteful. Olive oil's not cheap. Avoid. Now, tip number 7. This is where we start to get to the nitty-gritty of what I think absolutely defines the perfect plate of pasta. You want to start by undercooking your pasta by 2 to 3 minutes based on the packet instructions. So if your packet of pasta says cook for 12 minutes, you are going to cook for 9 to 10 minutes and taste. It should still be quite hard, but that's okay. It's not because we're like some Italians and like our pasta extremely al dente, but because of the following tips. Tip number 8. Now that your pasta is almost cooked through and we are ready to drain the pasta and finish the sauce, what you're going to do is pour off some of the pasta water. Now, why is pasta water important? This is a lot of what we've been leading up to. This pasta water has a lot of starch inside of it. If you'll see, it becomes very white and milky, and that's all the starch inside of it. Now, what's great about all the starch inside of this seasoned pasta water is that it is the perfect glue that holds the sauce to your pasta. So without the pasta water, you could have your like silky, smooth noodles. You pour your pasta sauce on it, you mix everything together, and you plate it up. Well, that's all well and good, but the sauce is just gonna fall off. Let's say, for example, you have your well-cooked pasta, you have your pasta sauce, you don't use any of the pasta water, you put the sauce on your pasta, and you start eating. Fairly delicious, you get a little bit of sauce with each bite, but you're gonna have some very bland strains of pasta inside of there. You're gonna have some watery sauce at the bottom of your plate, and I think that is what defines a less refined plate of pasta. Still delicious, much like bad pizza. It's pretty okay, but you can do much better. So save this pasta water, and let's get ready for the next tip, where you're going to change your pasta cooking ways. I thought that was on a roll. I'm not. Next tip. I seem a little pumped. This is like my second coffee in 2 hours, which in the morning is kind of a lot for me. So you get Hyper Steve. Tip number 9. Yeah, of course. So tip number 9, the most important step for cooking a plate of pasta is you want to finish cooking the pasta inside of the sauce. Now, for a lot of people, this conventional wisdom comes quite well for them. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this technique, what it means is that you'll take your slightly undercooked pasta, you'll put it back in the pot or a separate pan, you will add a couple splashes of your pasta water, let's call it 50 milliliters to start, and you will add a generous helping of your sauce. Now, you'll put that over medium heat, and you're going to start mixing things together. You can do that fancy trick where you flip the pasta around, or just go in with a rubber spatula, keep the heat going, keep the water bubbling away, just keep mixing and your sauce will come together. Now take, for example, you have a tomato sauce. Very simple, very basic. By cooking the pasta inside of the sauce, number 1, the pasta is going to cook much slower, so you can monitor the exact perfect cooking temperature of it. So as it's cooking slowly, taste it, see if it's al dente or like cooked to your liking. Should be a little toothsome, but not crunchy, obviously. That's kind of what al dente means. And by finishing the pasta inside of the sauce, you have a much wider window of opportunity to cook that pasta perfectly. Secondly, though, the great part about this is your pasta is going to continue absorbing sauce as it cooks. It's going to keep hydrating with the liquids around it and absorbing some of those flavors. So not only is the pasta going to be cooked much better and you have much more control over the overall cooking of the pasta, but it's going to be more flavorful because of the amount of sauce that's around it and that it's absorbed. And because you're still roughing up the outsides and agitating the starches on the outside of the pasta, it's going to stick very, very well to the sauce that you've got inside of the pan. And I believe this, the beautiful, creamy texture and nature that you get from mixing a sauce with the pasta water and the pasta, is what defines a really excellent plate of pasta. Now keep in mind, some sauces you may not continue cooking, so let's take a pasta with pesto. This is quite a fresh sauce. You don't really want to continue cooking it, or that beautiful green hue and flavor sort of disappears. So what you want to do is cook it maybe 1 minute less than completely cooked pasta, or half a minute less than completely cooked pasta, and just finish it inside of a bowl with your sauce and a little splash of pasta water, and just keep mixing it. The sort of residual heat inside of the pasta will let it cook that next 30 seconds to a minute as it incorporates with the sauce, and you'll have a wonderful, lovely, al dente, green, rich, beautiful sauce. Check out the course if you want more information and an amazing recipe on a variety of pestos. And tip number 10. This is how you can take your pasta to the next level, in my personal opinion. Serve it pretty much immediately out of the pan, or let it hang around for maybe like 2 to 3 minutes to cool down a little bit, and those starches to make the sauce nice and thick. But if you want to serve pretty much immediately, I would highly recommend serving on warm plates. It keeps the pasta nice and warm, especially if you have a cheesy, ooey gooey, delicious sauce. A nice warm plate will help it to continue to remain cheesy, ooey gooey. Now you don't want it so hot that you would curdle a carbonara, but nice warm plates are nice. Serve it with plenty of cheese. More often than not, even if the sauce, you'd be like, oh, maybe that doesn't go with cheese. People love cheese. Just serve cheese at the table, and a nice glass of wine doesn't hurt with your pasta, if that can be a tip. Sure. So yeah, those were my 10 tips for how you can make the perfect plate of pasta. If you want to check out the full course on Skillshare, you can use the link in my description, where I'll go into a lot more detail on each of these topics, the tools that you need to make a really amazing plate of pasta, lots of little minutiae, lots of recipes. Please go check that out if you're interested. Would really help the channel out as well. If you want a simple 10-point sort of checklist of all the tips that I mentioned, you can also check the link in my description, which links to my newsletter. If you sign up to my newsletter, you get a bunch of this free stuff. Should probably start using my newsletter again. Maybe later on this year, but you'll still get a bunch of free stuff for signing up. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope it brought you some value. I hope you're hungry for pasta now. And please let me know if you do try any of these techniques and if it made a difference in your life. And if you're still watching, please go check out this next video. It would really help me out. Thanks, I'll check you next time.